Hey folks, I'm best-selling author of The Power Zero, David McKnight. In today's video, you'll see part 4 of my interview with podcast host Jesse Wright, in which we discuss the very best way to figure out how much money you'll need to be able to retire.
So everyone always wants to know that. They're always like, how much money do I need to have in retirement? Which seems like a impossible question to answer just because like you're talking about, you have life insurance plans and annuity plans, and then you have all these other kind of different buckets. And how many houses do you have? There's so many factors. How would you answer that question? Someone's like, how much money do I need to have for retirement?
Well, I would take a look at what your Social Security is likely to be in the year you retire. If you have any company pensions, I'd look at what that's going to be. And then I would look at how much money you want to be living on in today's dollars. And then you can actually figure out what your retirement shortfall is. So let's say that you decide you want to live on $100,000 per year, and you'll have, adjusted for inflation, you'll have $40,000 of Social Security coming in. You'll have a $20,000 pension. That's $60,000 total. That means you got a $40,000 shortfall. So the question is, what is the most cost-effective way to give you that $40,000 per year adjusted for inflation? So if you want to do it the stock market approach way, then you're going to need $1 million, because that $1 million based on the 4% rule will crank out that $40,000 per year. If you want to use a guaranteed lifetime income annuity, then you probably need about half that amount, maybe $500,000 or $600,000, depending on what interest rates are in the year you take out the annuity. It depends on which approach you use. I'm obviously a big fan of the guaranteed lifetime income annuity approach, because let's say you got $1 million and you give $600,000 to the annuity company in exchange for that $40,000 of income. Well, now you got $400,000 left over that you can do some really interesting things with. You could use it as a discretionary fund in retirement to pay for shock expenses or aspirational expenses. Or you could use it to buy an LIRP to give you a death benefit that doubles as long-term care and give you safe, productive growth that feels like a bond that doesn't lose money. So that's sort of how I would understand and think about how much money you need in retirement.
A lot of people my age or younger, when I talk about Social Security with them, they always basically say they don't expect it to be here, Social Security to be available when they're retirement age. Do you think that's true?
No, I don't. I think that's a great way to get voted out of office, to start telling people that Social Security is not going to be around, or even if you think that in the back of your mind. It's much easier to just fix this thing. Susie Orman, one of the things that she does say that I like, she said the new retirement age should be 70. Everybody should stop thinking about retiring at age 65. The new retirement age should be 70. I actually agree with that. I think that the youngest you should be able to draw Social Security is 70. And so Social Security actually is a relatively easy fix in terms of shoring it up for future generations. You just have to push that retirement age out. So I don't think we should throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't think we need to cancel altogether for the younger generations. Just say, hey, look, you're going to be living a much longer life. You can be productive for a lot longer before you have to hang it up. So why not say that you can start getting Social Security when you're 70 as opposed to 62? So I think that's probably what will likely happen.
And you saw France, didn't they try to raise the age only like 2 years, and then they had mass protests on the street. Didn't they just rescind it after all the backlash?
Well, you can't do it on people that are about to retire. You got to do it on the younger generation, on people that are already thinking they're not going to get it to begin with. If you and I are skeptical as to whether Social Security is even going to be around, then they say, hey, you can no longer get it at 62, you can now get it at 70, or be like, oh, well, at least it's still around, right? So I think they probably didn't plan that out too well.
What about retiring in a different country? You're in Puerto Rico, which is not a different country. It's a territory of the U.S. But if you're part of Act 60 or some of these other tax programs, it's a pretty big hotspot for people that want to take advantage of the territory status of the U.S. My fiance is also Act 60 holder. We had a podcast on that. But what would you say for people that, hey, maybe I want to live my parents live in Panama, the country, half the year. They're retired there. They don't pay property tax, and there's a bunch of other incentives. They did it more for the weather than they did for the breaks, but there's so many different complications. Maybe just going to a different locality that has some warmth when you're older might be a solution.
And my dad did that. He moved to the Philippines, so that's where he lives now. But you got to remember, and one of the temptations is, hey, if you're living on Social Security, maybe a company pension, that those dollars are going to be stretched much further in a place that has, affordable health care, affordable gas costs, affordable, housing, those types of things. But the thing that you always have to remember is that no matter where you live in the world, you are still a U.S. citizen. It's actually pretty hard to lose your U.S. citizenship. It's a pretty protracted process that you have to go through over 10 years. So all of those dollars are going to be repatriated and show up on your U.S. tax return. So it doesn't matter where you're domiciled, you're still going to have to pay the piper when it comes to paying taxes on those accounts. The IRS is going to get their fair share no matter what. The only way that would change is if, you did move to Puerto Rico under Act 60 and you could have a company domiciled here that qualifies under Act 60, and then they're waiving your state tax, waiving your federal tax, charging you a flat 4% tax, and then waiving your capital gains. Great place to be if you're able to tap into that. But most people are just going to have to pay the piper no matter where they are in the world.
What do you say to the people that kind of take a moral issue and say that, you're just avoiding taxes? Like I mentioned before, we lived in Puerto Rico for several years, and there's, a lot of dislike between the Puerto Ricans and certain segments of the Act 60 community, and, Gringo Go Home protests and things like that when I was there. And what do you say to, and I'm not talking about Puerto Rico, but just in general about that component of people's moral obligation?
Yeah, I mean, I understand both sides of the issue. I'm not going to begrudge a Puerto Rican who feels the way that they do. I mean, Puerto Rican's been, it's been sort of treated like the redheaded stepchild for a long time now. And so haven't walked a mile in their shoes, so I don't pretend to understand fully how they see the world, but I understand that there's a lot of people that feel like it's sort of a colonialist type takeover when these people are coming in and causing, property prices to go up so they get priced out of the neighborhood. So I understand where all that's coming from. I guess my thought is, hey, if I can in some way by being here ameliorate their circumstances. I go to the local Spanish-speaking congregation here, and so I'm contributing in that way. We spend our dollars all over the island, and hopefully that helps stimulate the economy in some small way. So, I understand where they're coming from, but I don't feel like I'm taking advantage of them. And the other thing people got to remember is that Puerto Rico is a nice place to live, but it's not without its downsides. I mean, we lived through Hurricane Maria. We got here 6 weeks prior to Hurricane Maria, so we lived through a Category 5 hurricane. We have rolling blackouts. There's lots of potholes, streetlights that don't work, and you pay a lot of extra money to send your kids to private schools because the public schools aren't all that great. So there's a trend. It's hard to get your spouses to totally buy off on it because you don't, it's not quite first world, but it's just, there's some things that are tough about Puerto Rico for expat wives. There's two sides of it. We've been here for 7 years, and I think we'll probably be here for another 10 before we go back. But I'm trying to understand both sides of it.
Every place is without its pros and cons for sure. And what's the famous line of that Eagles song? Call a place paradise, kiss it goodbye. So, David, what would be like just one big tip that you'd give, say, to like a 50-year-old that's implementable today, not too complex, just that has the most bang for the buck, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record here, but look, every year that goes by where you don't maximum fund your Roth IRA, every year that goes by where you don't maximum fund your Roth 401k is a window that closes. You can't go back in time and say, hey, I want to fund for all those years that I missed out on. And not only when you fail to fund those tax-free accounts, not only do you lose that money, but you lose what that money could have earned for you over the rest of your life. So it's not just the $7,500 contribution that you missed out on to your Roth IRA. It's what that tax-free money would have grown to throughout the next 30 to 40 years. And so there's real life implications of not maximum funding these tax-free accounts. And so I would just say, hey, look, number one, be aware that we are in a totally different environment right now from a tax perspective. We are in a rising tax rate environment, and that you should really be tweaking your accumulation plan accordingly. You should be putting as much money into tax-free accounts as you possibly can, and with the understanding that you'll be wringing much more efficiency out of your retirement savings when you retire.
So David McKnight is our guest today, best-selling author of the book and documentary Power of Zero. I just want to thank you for joining us. I just have two final questions. One, David, where can people find you, get a hold of your book? Not just book, I should say, about multiple books. I think you got, 3 books now? Or where can they see your documentary? Where can they get a hold of you? And then after that, just leave us with a final thought. It doesn't have to be related to any of your books. Just could be whatever you're thinking about right now.
Yeah, so they can get any of my books on Amazon. There's actually 4 retirement books. Power Zero, Tax-Free Income for Life, Look Before You Lerp, and The Volatility Shield. I've got a new one coming out called Guru. Basically, the subtitle is Why America's Financial Gurus Are Leading You Astray and How to Get Back on Track. So that's coming out. You can watch the movie. You can stream that on Amazon or wherever you stream movies. And yeah, I was just closing thought. If all of this seems overwhelming for you, I would just start small. Go read The Power of Zero and see how it sits with you. I've tried to take some pretty complex principles and boil them down into some pretty simple concepts, hopefully. That's the feedback that people tend to give me, is that I've taken some complex stuff and I've distilled it down into some simple concepts. So I maybe start there and just remember, you got time on your side if you're younger, and don't let a year go by where you're not maxing out these accounts.
Yeah, I'm excited for that book, Guru. It seems like a lot of these financial influencers make more money on telling you how to make money than actually on themselves own ability to make money. So that is a book I'd be highly interested in. But yeah, thank you so much, David, for joining us today.
I appreciate you having me. Okay, folks, that was part 4 of my interview with podcast host Jesse Wright. If you would like some help implementing a balanced, comprehensive approach to tax-free retirement that shields you from the impact of higher taxes down the road, head on over to davemcknight.com and click on the Connect with an Advisor button. I'm happy to refer you to an advisor in the Power Zero network that has been trained, vetted, and qualified personally by me. If you're a financial professional and want to learn how to become a certified Power Zero advisor, head on over to powerzero.com and opt into my free video series. And if you have any comments or questions, feel free to drop them into the comment section below. I'll respond to every single one of them personally. And don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the bell so you never miss a video. This is David McKnight. I look forward to seeing you on the next video.